So, there's a question I get a lot, and it always goes something like, I've been studying English for years. I understand it fine, but the moment I actually try to speak, everything just disappears.
The knowing-speaking gap.
Exactly. And today we're going to talk about what actually closes it. Not in theory, practically. There is a method. It works. I'm Emily.
And I'm Nathan. By the end of this episode, you'll know the one habit that genuinely moves the needle from understanding English to actually speaking it, and why most learners skip it entirely. We'll get there.
Let's go.
Quick, please subscribe. It's free, it helps me grow this channel, and honestly, it's just me and 2 people I invented. Every subscriber counts. Back to them.
So, if someone came to you, intermediate level, understands a lot but can't seem to speak, what's the first thing you'd actually tell them?
Honestly, listen more, but differently from how most people listen.
What do you mean differently?
So most learners listen to English as background. It's on while they're doing something else. And that has some value. Exposure is exposure. But it doesn't build fluency on its own.
Because you're not really processing it.
Right. The kind of listening that builds fluency is active listening. You're paying attention to how sentences are built. When something sounds interesting, you notice it. You rewind and hear it again.
Noticing. That's the key word.
Noticing, yeah. And the reason it matters so much is that it's how grammar actually sticks. Not from memorizing a rule in a textbook, from hearing a structure, registering it, and then starting to hear it everywhere.
And then one day you just use it, because it sounds like something you've already heard many times.
Exactly. And if I hadn't been doing this kind of active listening for years, I honestly wouldn't notice mistakes the way I do now. That ear didn't come from studying. It came from attention and repetition.
The ear is everything. And the other thing, and this is the one most people skip entirely, is actually speaking out loud, making your mouth produce the language.
Shadowing.
Shadowing, repeating after audio, reading out loud, saying things to yourself. Because there's a real gap between understanding a sentence and being able to say it.
Your brain and your mouth are completely different muscles.
Completely. And if I had started shadowing earlier, actually repeating things out loud instead of just listening, I would be so much more comfortable in spontaneous conversation now. Because the sentences would already feel familiar in your mouth. They're not new anymore.
Your mouth has already been there.
Exactly.
And for people who like to prepare before they speak, which I think is actually a genuine advantage, you can choose what to practice. You can repeat the same sentence 10 times in private before it ever comes up in real life.
Private practice is so underrated.
So underrated. And, wait, did you catch what I said just now? If I weren't someone who does this kind of private repetition, I would have hit a ceiling in my speaking a long time ago. I'll say that one again at the end. There's something in the structure I want you to listen for. Keep it in the back of your mind.
Flagged. Okay, so we've got listen actively, notice, shadow. What else?
Volume. The sheer amount of English going into your ears. Because the more you listen, the more a sense of that sounds right versus that sounds off starts to form naturally. You don't need the rule, you just know.
And that knowing, that gut sense, is what fluency actually is. Not knowing more vocabulary. Fluency is not having to think.
Right. The goal is automatic, and you get there through repetition, not through more studying.
Okay, let's look at what just happened in that conversation.
So Nathan said, if I hadn't been doing this kind of active listening for years, I wouldn't notice mistakes the way I do now. Let's pull that apart.
The if clause If I hadn't been doing this kind of active listening, that's past. Past perfect. Something that was or wasn't happening over time.
And the result, I wouldn't notice the way I do now, that's present, today.
Past cause, present result. Mixed conditional type 1.
And I said, if I had started shadowing earlier, I would be so much more comfortable in spontaneous conversation now. Same structure. If I had done X, past perfect, I would be different now. Present result.
The word now is doing a lot of work. Still, today, at this point, those are your signals that the consequence is landing in the present. That's what makes it mixed.
And the one Nathan flagged, if I weren't someone who does this kind of private repetition, I would have hit a ceiling in my speaking a long time ago. That one's different. We'll come back to it next round.
And notice what we've been doing this whole conversation. The grammar has been in there the whole time. We haven't announced it. We've just been talking. And if you've been listening carefully, you've already heard it. That's noticing. That's the method working in real time.
I want to get specific for people who are listening and thinking, okay, but speaking out loud feels like a lot.
Which is fair.
Because the idea of just going out and having conversations before you feel ready, that's genuinely uncomfortable. And I don't think you have to do it.
Right. The sequence doesn't have to be study, then immediately perform. It can be study, practice privately, feel ready, then speak.
And the private practice phase is where everything actually gets built. You're not performing for anyone. You repeat the same sentence 10 times until it feels automatic. Nobody hears it except you.
And then when it comes up in a real conversation, it's not new. Your mouth has already said it many times. So you stop thinking about the sentence and you start thinking about what you actually want to say.
Which is where real conversation lives.
Exactly. And the listening piece. I want to go back to that because I think people underestimate how much the volume matters.
A genuinely embarrassing amount of listening.
A lot. But the active part is what makes the volume work. Because 10 minutes of really focused listening, actually paying attention to how sentences are built, is doing more work than 2 hours of English in the background.
And if you had been doing just 10 minutes of active listening every single day, you would sound noticeably different from where you are right now. Not because you studied more, because your ear would have trained your mouth before your brain even got involved.
Hear, notice, repeat, produce. Every time you go around that loop with the same structure, it gets more automatic.
And automatic is fluency. That's the only definition that actually works.
Right. And if I hadn't built that automaticity through years of repetition, I wouldn't speak the way I do now. It would still feel like assembly, finding the piece, checking if it fits, putting it together.
Grammatical Lego.
Exactly. And what's good about this method for people who naturally replay things, who pay close attention to how language works, that instinct is not a weakness. It's precisely the right one.
If I weren't someone who naturally noticed how things were said and replayed them, I would have learned so much more slowly. That attention is a skill, and this kind of learning plays directly to it.
The podcast is designed to work with it. That's the whole point.
Okay, round 2 gave us the other direction. Let's close it out.
So, if you had been doing 10 minutes of active listening every day, you would sound noticeably different right now. Type 1. Past perfect in the if clause, past cause.
And the result, you would sound different now. Present consequence.
If I hadn't built that automaticity through repetition, I wouldn't speak the way I do now. Same direction. Past negative cause, present negative result.
And then mine, if I weren't someone who naturally noticed how things were said, I would have learned so much more slowly. That's the other direction.
If I weren't present imaginary, who you are right now.
I would have learned more slowly. Past. What would have happened?
Present condition, past result. Type 2.
And now, the payoff.
The habit. The method.
It's not one thing. It's a loop. Hear it, notice it, say it out loud, hear it again. And the more times you go around that loop, with the same structure, the same phrase, the more automatic it becomes.
And this episode is one lap of that loop. The conversation is the listening, the dissection is the noticing, the shadowing coming up is the output.
Come back next week and listen again. You'll catch things you missed today.
Quick recap.
Type 1, past cause, present result. Structure, if plus had plus past participle, would plus base verb plus now, still, today.
If I had started shadowing earlier, I would be so much more comfortable now.
If she hadn't kept going, she wouldn't be this confident today.
Type 2, present imaginary condition, past result. Structure, if plus were or weren't, would have plus past participle.
If I weren't someone who prepares, I would have struggled so much more.
If he were more patient with himself, he would have made much faster progress.
Time signals for type 1, now, still, today, at this point.
Time signals for type 2, a long time ago, back then, at the time, would have.
Golden rule, 2 different time frames. The mismatch is everything.
Hear the mismatch. That's how you know.
Quiz time. 3 sentences, 1 correct, 2 have a mistake. Each one twice. See if you catch it.
Ready.
Sentence 1. If I listened more actively when I was learning, I would speak more naturally now. If I listened more actively when I was learning, I would speak more naturally now.
Mistake. If I listened needs to be if I had listened. Past perfect. Without it, both clauses feel like imaginary present, which is just a second conditional. The past perfect is what creates the time shift.
Sentence 2. If she weren't so focused on getting everything perfect, she would have made progress much faster. If she weren't so focused on getting everything perfect, she would have made progress much faster.
Correct. Present imaginary condition. If she weren't so focused on getting everything perfect. Past result. She would have made progress faster. Type 2, textbook. That one's right.
Sentence 3. If he had been shadowing from the beginning, he would sounded so much more natural by now. If he had been shadowing from the beginning, he would sounded so much more natural by now.
He would sounded. That's the mistake. After would have, you always need the past participle. He would have sounded so much more natural. Would plus past tense is never correct in English. Not once.
Shadowing time. This is the part where your mouth does the work. Each sentence twice, then 5 seconds. Say it out loud. Actually out loud, not in your head. If I had started shadowing earlier, I would be so much more comfortable in spontaneous conversation now. If I had started shadowing earlier, I would be so much more comfortable in spontaneous conversation now. If I hadn't been doing this kind of active listening for years, I wouldn't notice mistakes the way I do now. If I hadn't been doing this kind of active listening for years, I wouldn't notice mistakes the way I do now. If she weren't so focused on getting everything perfect, she would have made progress so much faster. If she weren't so focused on getting everything perfect, she would have made progress so much faster. If you had been doing 10 minutes of active listening every day, you would sound noticeably different right now. If you had been doing 10 minutes of active listening every day, you would sound noticeably different right now. And the one I flagged in round 1, here it is. If I weren't someone who does this kind of private repetition, I would have hit a ceiling in my speaking a long time ago. If I weren't someone who does this kind of private repetition, I would have hit a ceiling in my speaking a long time ago. Present imaginary condition, past result. Type 2 mixed conditional. You just said it out loud. That's 1 rep. Your mouth has been there now. Come back tomorrow and say it again.
That's it. Hear it. Notice it. Say it out loud. Hear it again. Every episode is 1 lap of that loop.
If this helped, subscribe and hit a like. It genuinely helps us keep making these. Next episode, something that comes up every time you have to explain something in English and you're not quite sure how to start. That's the tease.
See you then.
See you then.